Welcome. So I just watched Jupiter's Legacy, and it's trash. It's it's the worst kind of trash. It's the annoying kind of trash, and it's not trash in the sense that it's missing key aspects of storytelling, of filmmaking, of show production. But it's annoying. It's annoying. So I'll give you some examples. Every character on the show is detestable. Every single character, from the utopian to his son to his daughter to the wife, Lady Liberty, to his brother, the mind control guy. Everybody is there's no one I was rooting for. It's full of annoying characters. Excuse me. So the utopian, you know, the concept that is inherent in his name, the utopian, should make for an interesting character because a utopia is impossible to achieve because we're human beings and human beings are naturally flawed. There's no way a utopia will ever exist as long as people are involved with the concept. So inherently there's dramatic conflict in his makeup, in his character design, in his character identity. Because him being a utopian, his desires will always clash with the reality of the world. So, how does this play out in Jupiter's galaxy? All that ever happens, okay, this is how they dramatize this guy's beef with not getting his win, with not getting the utopia. It's just him constantly talking about the code. The code meaning they're supposed to set an example, they don't kill, and all these buzzkill, goody two shoe kind of bullshit. So it is not actually dramatized. The conflict he has, being a utopian and having to live in a real world that is gray, right? While he is a very black and white character, it's not actually dramatized. All he does is talk about it. Here's an example.
For not being good enough.
That's not what she told you, was it?
Okay, I get it. The code is a symbol for being a good boy and that we can't prevent loss or tragedy. I'm not naive.
But
But the world never used to be so intentionally cruel. It used to be that if you gave your kids everything they needed, they'd be okay. That you protect your country, they call you a hero.
the world has always been chaos and shit, my friend. It's your beliefs that have kept you hopeful. If I'm good, bad things won't happen to me or the ones that I love. It's a construct you created a long time ago to shield yourself from reality. But reality always wins out, no matter how profoundly we rail against it.
So what are you saying? That there is no difference between right and wrong? That morality is some kind of an intellectual exercise?
No. I'm suggesting that you exist in a world of your own creation. A world of black and white, good and evil, and it has protected you for the most part.
But
it doesn't allow for the way the world really is, and how the majority of people live in it. In shades of gray.
It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. It doesn't take a neural biologist, a neuroscientist, to play out this scenario in his head and understand why this doesn't work. So for a whole show to be built on this very weak premise that can be sorted out in one conversation is the biggest flaw of Jupiter's Legacy. And this shit never stops.
Should be back by dinner.
Need some help?
Your dad still wants you to stay on the farm.
I'm not doing any good here, Mom. I need to get back out there. Look, I understand what you said about us being better, about setting an example for everyone else.
But what?
But it never stops, Mom. The hate, people killing each other for no reason. What good is setting an example if no one ever follows it?
because it's the right thing. Remember that.
You see what I mean? It never stops. The utopian is always on this bullshit. Everybody else is always on this bullshit. I have rarely ever felt this much contempt for fictional characters. Like, I want to physically punch him in the face, in this fictional face, because they're just so unbelievably annoying. Staying with the fact that most, if not all of them, all these characters are annoying. His son is called whatever, I can't remember. Anyway, his son. This guy, these days everybody's talking about, simping, don't be a simp, or be an alpha male, or whatever. Don't simp for girls. This guy simps for his father. He simps so much for his father, he doesn't come across as a real human being. You see this thing, and he's less than a puppy. He's not charismatic at all. All he does is looking to please. All he ever does is try to please his father. All he ever does. So, spoiler alert, within the show, this character, the son, sees his father and mother about to be killed by the only villain, okay, in this damn show. Like, this is a superhero show, and they hardly do superhero shit. They just talk a lot and look sad. So this villain, one of the villain, the major villain of the show, he's about to kill the Utopian and his wife, Lady Liberty. So the son kills this guy. Straight up punches his face off, literally. And the Utopian, his father, grounds him like a little child. And this is a grown man. This is a grown-ass man. The son is a grown-ass man. Has to be like 25 or something. He grounds him. And the kid, he gets grounded, and he goes and lives on the farm. And the Utopian says, you cannot put on your suit. You cannot fight crime. You cannot be a superhero until I tell you. He literally, I'm paraphrasing, but what the Utopian actually says is very close to what I just said. It is so cringe. And you can't believe this guy is taking it. The son just takes it, bows his head, and just says, okay, yes, daddy. Yes, dad. And on the other spectrum, you have his daughter, the Utopian's daughter. And I see what the writers are trying to do. They're creating a contrast between the boy and the girl, the son and the daughter. The son is very obedient and wants to uphold the code. And then the daughter is a complete rebel. She hates the father, doesn't want anything to do with superheroics, hates that she has her powers, hates that she has to deal with the fact that she inherited her powers from these people and now has to live up to that legacy. Because something they keep on saying in the show is everything you do, all your actions reflects back on the family. So she's such an extreme compared to the son. She's a polar opposite. But her story, and you might think that's interesting, but the way her story plays out is all she does is have sex and do drugs. And her story doesn't really have an arc. There's nothing. Another reason why this show is so frustrating. Everything about this show is annoying. I'm picking that word specifically. It's an annoying show. It's an annoying show. Nothing goes anywhere. It's very bland. Every episode is bland and so self-serious. It's so hard to watch. But I needed something to make a video for. And I was kind of looking forward to it because this always happens when I see certain trailers. I can't quite tell. I get this nebulous feeling as to if a show is going to be good. Like, you might see a trailer and know that, okay, this looks great. And you might watch a show and you just don't know. And then you might watch a trailer and be like, yeah, this looks horrible. With Jupiter's Legacy, I watched it and I just didn't know quite what to make of it because it did look like a CW show. But then it's based on a pretty interesting comic book. I haven't read the comic book. But yeah, it is nebulous, and my feeling was correct. I just didn't know where to place it, and that was warranted because the show is a big nothing. It's a big nothing. Everything and everyone is so serious. As I mentioned before, people have these long stares, and there's lots of scenes of the Utopian, Josh Duhamel, whatever his name is, always looking sad and always thinking, just like you see him in all the trailers, right? so self-serious. But the concept, the major conceit of the show is not strong enough. The major conceit of the show is not interesting enough, especially given our current um, uh, how much we consume lately, how much we consume superhero content. You know, given this situation we're in, where there's just so much great superhero content out there, right? Especially after watching Invincible. There's quite a bit of comparison that I want to make with Jupiter's Legacy and Invincible. I'll get back to that. So, spoiler alert. What is this conceit that I'm talking about? What is the premise that is supposed to be driving everything in Jupiter's Legacy? Okay, first of all, it's legacy. It's all about kids living in the shadows of the generation before, their parents, right? Um, but unlike a show like Invincible, where the conceit, and I spoke about this in my very first review of Invincible, about a Alfred Hitchcock concept to create suspense, where you tell the audience about a bomb underneath the table, but the characters within the narrative do not know about that bomb. So the suspense is created by the fact that you just don't know when that bomb is going to go off, but you know that bomb is going to go off eventually. In Invincible, that bomb was Omni Man. And when that bomb went off, oh my God, Jesus Christ, it was just so dramatic, so intense, right? So there's an inbuilt conflict and drama that is generated from the fact that Omni Man, spoiler alert, is a sociopathic conqueror from another planet, like the evil Superman, basically, and he has a human son who doesn't agree with what Omni Man is about. So you're looking forward to that face-off, to that showdown, and it's amazing. So you feel the drama right away. With Jupiter's Legacy, you know, once again, it's legacy. This show is all about the relationship between the past generation and the current generation. But it's so uninteresting because the utopian and the past generation, how they got their powers, is nothing special. It's nothing special. It's just another superhero origin story, right? But on top of that, the utopian doesn't bring anything to the table like Omni-Man does. Like, he doesn't have some ulterior motive. He's not a bad guy. He's just a delusional, crazy person who believes in a utopia, right? So the only beef he has is always talking about this thing and trying to convince people about this code, and that's it. There's nothing else that's interesting about the utopian, right? Spoiler alert, how do these guys get their powers? Now, the thing about this show is the only slightly interesting thing about Jupiter's Legacy is how the utopian and that generation got their powers. And the show knows it. The show knows it because they drag it out from the beginning of the show, episode 1 to episode 8. They drag it out. You don't get the answer. They start the journey in episode 1, but you don't get the answer about how they got their powers until episode 7. And there's only 8 episodes. And it's not satisfying. So that's why I said slightly interesting, because they do not explore where their powers came from exactly. They only just show the adventure about them going to this island and him getting the people together, because he got the utopian got some visions from his dead father, and then he's given some signs and waypoints and things to go to and people to gather, right, so that they could go to this mountain, this desert, this island, and get some powers. So it's not interesting, but they dragged this out up until episode 7. So there's no drama here. So there's an A story and a B story. The B story is the one I just described, right? And the A story is what's going on with the new generation and how they're dealing with the code of not killing and trying to create a utopia, basically. Because, as I mentioned before, the utopian son kills a supervillain, like in the very first episode or so, right? So that's what they're dealing with. And it's so uninteresting because, as I said, they grounded the son. So you don't see him again. And then you just follow the story of his daughter, which is, as I said, drugs and just having sex and doesn't really go anywhere. And all the other kids just following their parents up and down like puppy dogs. It's really uninteresting. So that's the A story. Very uninteresting. And then the B story is all about how the previous generation got their powers, which ends up being just whatever. But that was the most interesting aspect of the whole show. David Lynch said a great thing about ideas, about premises for stories, for movies. And his analogy is it's like going fishing. You cast out your rod. Sometimes you catch a small fish, sometimes you catch a big fish. But, if you catch a small fish, you throw it back in. Because, yes, it's a solid idea, and you could write something about it, and it hits all the critical points that makes for a good story. But it's not necessarily very interesting. It doesn't mean it should exist. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, right? That's what Jupiter's Legacy is. The premise is so weak. There isn't enough to sink your teeth into. And it's so drawn out and so self-serious based off of this very weak premise, which, as I said before, is the new generation having to deal with the demands of the previous generation, having to uphold the code. And the way it plays out is so boring. It's so boring. Now, there are other aspects of this show that is just consistent throughout every episode, that they do this thing. It's just so poorly written as well, just so uninteresting and confusing. The show is very confused. They do this thing where something happens, because they're trying to create dramatic effect. Something happens, and then, a character complains about it, and then a few minutes later, they agree to that thing, right? I'll give you an example here.
Color of the man handing out the jobs.
That should be good. Thank you.
What the hell are you doing here?
These are guests, boy. You treat them like it.
It's okay, Mrs. Small.
Not in my house, it isn't.
Bertie, can we have a minute, please?
I'll put in some more tea. Mind your manners, both of you.
Boy, it's right. What the hell are you doing here?
You found any work?
We'd be staring at you if we had.
Oh, yeah. Let's all just take a moment, huh?
I don't know you. So you want to take a moment? Why don't you go outside for it?
Well, now, whoa, this is not about me. This is about your son.
Me.
He in trouble?
No, not in trouble. It's an opportunity. And I would like for you to be a part of it, Fitz.
Part of what?
An expedition. We're gonna secure a boat and a crew in Morocco.
Morocco?
Don't just hear us out.
I don't know anything about the ocean, and I don't need any favors, Mr. Sampson.
Listen, you would be doing me a favor. I need people that I can count on.
And where would you be going once you leave Morocco?
Well, it's...
Well, we can't tell you that.
Why not?
Because then everybody would be trying to beat us there.
I'm not going anywhere.
I'll pay you. 6 months, whatever you would have made at the mill.
Yeah, plus, whatever we find where we're going will be a fair split right down the line.
Fair split.
Is it dangerous?
No.
Maybe, no, yeah, well, maybe.
A little bit.
But when we find what we're looking for, we're gonna be able to hire everybody back from the mill, including your dad. What do you say? Chance of a lifetime, come on. Come on.
My family needs me right here. You know where the door is.
No, Bitsy, you don't understand.
I don't think you don't.
You heard the
don't
boys.
put your hands on me.
Don't touch Shelton. It's the chance of a lifetime. Just give me a...
Come on,
Kid,
Shelton.
just get chance of a lifetime.
Just get out of here.
Let's go.
Coming in here like that after what he did to us.
Yeah. He's got some nerve coming in here and offering you the chance of a lifetime.
Didn't you just kick him out?
You don't air your dirty drawers in front of company. And anybody who walks through that door is company, just like your mom said.
You want me to crawl back to the same man who stole everything from us?
It was his father who did all the stealing. And it's his son trying to make things right.
I can't believe you want me to do this.
I want you to think, son. Not with your guts all twisted up inside.
What the fuck? What the fuck? Like, so clearly the father was all about kicking the Utopian and Skyfox out, right? He was all about it. They're frustrated by the fact that they got let go and their pensions got stolen, right? So they hate this guy. So the father and son agree, like, yeah, fuck this guy, get him out of here. But as soon as they leave, the father starts telling his son that, hey, why did you do that? What the hell? Like, are you psycho? Are you crazy? What's going on here? So it contradicts. It's always contradictory. The show always contradicts itself, and it makes for a very frustrating viewing experience. It's very hard to watch, and the show is filled with these contradictions, and it's because the drama, the conflict they're trying to create is contrived. They know where they're trying to get to, so they figure out a way to get there, but it's inorganic. It doesn't work. It doesn't generate or elicit the right emotion, because I'm just angry watching this stuff because it doesn't make any sense. So the conflict isn't organic, but they have to arrive at a certain point so that they can move on to other aspects. This happens all the time in the show. Here's another example.
It has to work. We've come this far. We've come this far together. Together. Walter, George, you guys got to put everything aside. You got to let things go. No.
It's not just about George and Walter. It's about you and Walter, too.
So there you go. Like, so he says, hey, man, you guys have to squash the beef so this light thing can work. Then the woman tells him, then it doesn't work. And then the girl tells him, yo, you got to squash the beef too. The guy who's telling someone to squash the beef, so he still has beef? You know, like, isn't that a little hypocritical? Like, how does that make any sense? So the show is full of stuff like this. It just never ends. It's a very annoying watch. As I mentioned before, it is not satisfying whatsoever. It doesn't even come close to being satisfying. It is extremely annoying to watch. So the point is, this show has a major problem with creating conflict, and it happens all the time. I'll give you another example.
Hey, whoa, was it true what you said earlier?
I said a lot of things.
You know about me being Dad's golden boy?
Why don't you focus on where you're going?
You know, I always thought you were Dad's favorite. I mean, you're the one that got the good grades. You were his right-hand man at the company.
Because that's what someone looks for in an employee, not a son.
You see, that's your problem, Walt. You can't take a compliment. Everything is a slight. You know, maybe if you lightened up a bit, George wouldn't be so hard
Don't
on you.
even bring him into it.
Exactly your problem, Walt.
Do you want to know what my problem is? It's taking a back seat to a younger brother who never deserved half the attention he received, who had everything handed to him, so he didn't have to fight for a scrap. He's see, it comes easy to you, Shah. Because people always agree with whatever you propose. Like you're some kind of messiah. You snap your fingers, and people follow. You have no idea what it feels like to have no one take you seriously, even when you know you're right.
Oh, this is not true. Come on.
Dad would still be alive if you listened to me! Dad. No, I told you, Shell, that it wasn't time to expand the company, and you treated it like gossip. You ridiculed me. You didn't listen, Shell. You never listen. No, just keep moving. Hold on.
So these guys, like you get what they're trying to do, because this happens in a lot of other movies where tension is created because the characters are in a precarious situation, like on the edge of a mountain. Usually in an action movie, on the edge of a mountain, maybe some monsters come down or whatever, or there's some bats that is making the cross harder, right? The danger of falling becomes very real. But what Jupiter's Legacy decides to do is they're on the edge of the mountain and they start having this emotional conversation. Like it's really not the time. So it's, as I said, very frustrating to watch because it's really unbelievable in all the wrong ways. I haven't read the comic book, and I guess this is why, because there's just certain stories that shouldn't exist. Like they should have added something else to the premise. Like, yeah, he's the utopian. He wants to create a utopia. All right, the twist should be he becomes disillusioned by that because the world isn't the way he wants, and then he becomes a villain. Then we could have a story, right? Then we'll have a story. If this whole 8 episodes was all about, let's say episode 1 to 4 is this guy following the code, whatever, and things just aren't working out, and the world is suffering, and villains are killing heroes while they're still trying to uphold the code of not killing. So eventually he says, okay, man, screw the code, I'm going to murder everybody. And then he becomes a threat to the world. That's interesting. That would be interesting. But other than that, like just him being some crazy delusional person who wants to create a utopia, which is clearly unrealistic, and the way it's dramatized isn't interesting at all, where he just talks about it, just keeps on talking and annoys everybody in the show and his audience. It just doesn't work. It's not interesting at all, and it's annoying. It's an annoying viewing experience. Another really interesting thing about this show is that it was developed by Stephen S. DeKnight. If you don't recognize that name, that's the guy that created the amazing Netflix Daredevil show. Unbelievable. He's the one who did that great first season. So this guy is clearly talented. You know, he is clearly talented. He also is the one behind Spartacus. And I remember there was a bit of controversy because that was around the time that Game of Thrones was just so big that he would often complain. You know, he would be interviewed and he would say things like, Spartacus has tits and blood. Why aren't people watching Spartacus? Why is everybody talking about Game of Thrones? So this guy's clearly talented, but what the hell happened here? What the hell, Steven? What's going on? This is annoying trash. So, have you seen Jupiter's Legacy? If you have, let me know. Let's talk about it in the comments below. Like, am I missing something? Is this interesting? I hated this show. This show was hard to get through. It was really hard to get through. Anyway, Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Stay tuned. My next video will be me working on my comic book and learning all the lessons that I can from shows like this and trying to avoid those pitfalls in my story. And I hope you'll join me for that. So I'd appreciate it if you like what I'm doing, to hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you'll get notified about my next video. Hit the like button if you liked what you see, and hit the dislike button so I can do better for next time. Thank you very much, and I'll see you on the flip side. Peace out.